Good morning, welcome to NUFC Matters. This is a pre-recorded show which we did on Friday because I'm off to Brentford on Saturday. So it's a big welcome to Steve Howey. How are you, Steve?
I'm very good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, great to see you back on the show. Obviously, during lockdown, we all had a lot of time to fill in. So the likes of you and Clarky, etc., managed to come on. So obviously, you're a busy man. We try to get some of the ex-players back on. So thanks for coming on. And we thought we'd do it a little bit differently today. We thought we'd give you the opportunity to pick your dream team, because a lot of the people who featured on NUFC Matters, a lot of the fans have picked their dream team, even me. And it's an opportunity really for us to get an insight into to how the players feel about some of the players that they either played with or players that they've watched when they've left the club. So where do we start with you? Well, we start in goal, like we start with everybody else. Who is your goalkeeper, Steve?
My goalkeeper's shit. But obviously, I was lucky enough to have Pavel and Shaka, of course. Before that was like Mike Hooper and Tommy Wright and people like that. I played with Schmeichel and Nicky Weaver and Dave Seaman with England. But for me, I think just as we start this, I know we'd had a conversation before about past and present, and it didn't have to be players that I actually played with. And I get that. But for me personally, it had to be players that I played with, because whilst I can tip my hat for the likes of Jackie Milburn or Bob Moncur or Jonathan Woodgate, people like this, and the other lads that's played, very good players that's played for Newcastle. I didn't know them. I didn't know them as people, but training every day with them and getting to know them, that's why I've decided to go with players that I actually know. So they're not only good players off on the pitch, but also great people off it.
What was his strengths, Shea? Because, I remember when he first came, there was a lot of criticism, people saying he was too small for a goalkeeper. I always laugh when people say that, because it really doesn't make much of a difference, I don't think. But, as long as they're capable of doing the job. But what were his major strengths, do you think?
I think, first and foremost, he was a very good shot stopper. I know we get the old Roy Keane thing. It's like, well, goalkeeper, that's his job. And that's true. But Shea was really good at that. He was very brave as well. Sometimes to his detriment when coming out at feet. Yes, he would be commanding. He would let you know very early doors as a centre half. It's nice when a goalkeeper shouts early, either keepers or away. I have had some goalkeepers that shouted keepers away, which just causes absolute chaos in a defender's mind, because you just don't know where you're at. But it was just the other week, funnily enough, before this came about, there was like a clip of Shea and some of his saves. So, I think if you just look at any player over a period of time, whether it's defender, midfield player, striker, goalkeeper, you could have a reel that actually you think, wow, was quite impressive. But Shea was very, very good.
Yeah, he's in a lot of dream teams that the fans have done as well. No surprise there at all. Always a tip to a couple of the others, but Shea seems to be the most popular, it has to be said. Okay, formation. Are you going for an old-fashioned 4-4-2? I
am, yes. I could have fannied about a bit and tried to be clever, but I just thought I'll just stick to the 4-4-2. Just obviously, when you've got the two players that I've got up front, one of them does tend to drop and kind of have that kind of link between the midfield and the forwards. But I've also got two lads that I felt as though got into the box really well and scored goals.
Okay, well, let's start at the back. I'm intrigued to see whether you've actually picked yourself, but and that's the thing I never really thought of until we suggested doing this. Will any player pick themselves? But right back, who have you gone for?
I've gone for Warren Barton. Again, I could have gone with somebody like Steve Watson and other players that I've played with. But I think with Warren, I think given the fact that what I liked about Warren was he'd signed for a lot of money. He'd come under a little bit of criticism because I think fans thought, well, what is it? Why is it that we've paid that amount of money for him? And to be fair to Warren, he never, ever once hide. He always wanted the ball. He might give it away. He got a little bit of stick, but he still wanted the ball. And ultimately, he completely won the fans over. And I thought, a lot of players in that situation could have crumbled because it is intense in that park. And players can sink or swim when you come under criticism, and he didn't. And obviously, it came through not only how the strength of character he was, but also what a very good player he was.
Yeah, I just always remember that game at Anfield, the second 4-3, when he came away with man of the match. He got a goal. I just remember him kissing the badge, and it meant a lot to him. And I think we've seen it since he left the club as well, and social media developed, and he became quite prominent on Twitter. That he's such a big fan. He's another one of those people that defies that stupid logic that our previous owner had, that Newcastle fans don't like Cockneys. He came here and he made a part of his home, and he loves the place.
Well, he did, yeah. I mean, you see him now, and he's quite well, I wouldn't say outspoken, but at the same time, with the takeover and different things, and commenting on different things on social media, he's also done a bit of media work over here while still based over in San Diego, and of course he's been at the forefront, which him, like a lot of players, myself as well, kind of pushed to one side with the last regime. And I think he's been obviously one of the very, very kind of more outspoken about how good this regime could be.
Yeah, great stuff. Okay, so that's your right back. Who's at left back?
I have gone with Bez. Again, I could have gone with likes of Rob Elliott and people like that, but Bez was certainly up and down, got the odd goal. But again, coming from Portsmouth and then being all the way through, and how he progressed, because he was a good player. But ultimately, Bez tells the stories about when he was speaking to Kevin Keegan about Kevin was sort of said, I'm going to take this club where I'm going to take it. We're going to get in the Champions League. You're going to play for England and all this. And Bez was like, I think the manager's been drinking, or he's deluded or something. But the manager was right. But it's no good a manager having all these kind of aspirations for you. You've got to prove them as well. And he did, because he just got better and better and better. And as I said, he used to do my nut in at times, especially when I played with Warren Barton or Watto and Philippe at the back and Bez, because they all used to bugger off and leave us. So it was just when Peasy played at the back, we had at least two sort of decent-ish defenders.
Yeah, great stuff. And again, it's very similar to the to the fullbacks that most of the fans have picked. It's a hail back to that wonderful team in the 90s. Okay, two centre halves in a 4-4-2. Who's your first one?
Phil. Phil was an unbelievable player. I mean, he wasn't a centre half. That was his position, but he wasn't a centre half. He wasn't a bad defender, but he wasn't a defender. He was just a fantastic player. You'd see his goals and that he'd scored. Obviously, there's that iconic goal against Manchester United, but he scored some other cracking goals. Very good footballer. Love to link up play. Again, like I said, sometimes I'd go to look at my left and think he'd be there, and he'd be stood next to Peter or Les or Al, and you'd be thinking, what are you doing? You don't come back. And he would just laugh, and he would basically just do his Sid the Sextus thing when I was having a go at him. I could always picture him just running towards me, and I'd be effing and blinding at him, like having a go, sort of saying, get back. And he would just laugh and say, titsuit. And I'd be like, are you mental? We're in a battle here, and you're doing Sid the Sextus, and I'm hammering you, and you're saying titsuit. I'm just like, wow. But that summed him up, because he was such a great lad as well. He was brilliant to have in the dressing room, lots of fun. But what a player he was. Really, really good player.
Yeah, start turn. I just remember him playing in the World Cup, I think it was. And then, suddenly he was at Newcastle and made a hell of a difference. And of course, synonymous with that wonderful goal he scored against Manchester United, which gets played time and time again. We'll never get sick of seeing it. Okay, who's alongside him then? I've got a feeling I know who this one is.
Yeah, I've gone with Peasy. I know obviously there's Bob Moncur, and I've heard a lot about Jonathan Woodgate, and I get that absolutely. But Peasy wasn't I'll be brutally honest, and I think he'll accept this. He wasn't a brilliant footballer by any stretch of the imagination, but if you told him to mark somebody, he would, and he would follow them all over. I can remember when he was at QPR and we had Coley up front, he just didn't give him a sniff. It was basically sort of, he was given the task, follow him. No matter what happens, just follow him and nullify him. if he goes to the toilet, you wipe his arse. And that's what basically Peasy was like. He would just be, given that job, he would 9 times out of 10 do a solid job. Distribution-wise, was he the best? No, he wasn't. But ultimately, he was. I always knew if I'd made a mistake or I'd missed the ball, he was pretty much behind me. I couldn't say the same with Phil because he would be stood next to Al or Les or Rob Lee. But as a defensive partner, he was a lot more reliable.
Yeah, no, definitely one of the best centre-halves we've had in recent times as well. So that's your back four and your goalkeeper sorted out. So we're going into midfield now. Let's start on the right. Who's on the right side of midfield?
Keith Gillespie. Just purely, you look at the games that he played in where he was just electric again as the Barcelona one. It didn't defy him as a player because I thought he was just outstanding as a player at Newcastle. Electric pace, went past. He was a player for me that exploited his biggest asset, which was his pace. I played with people like Franz Carr and Wayne Faraday who were electrifying pace-wise, but didn't just knock the ball past the defender and get past them and whip it in. Keith did that. He just knocked it past the player, ran past him, and got it in the box. And that's what, Les wanted. That's what Al wanted, and he was brilliant at it. Good close control, but again, as a player on and off the pitch, was excellent. Not brilliant at gambling, but otherwise, it was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, as he referred to in his very successful book. But Keith, lovely guy. Where did the nickname Dizzy come from? Because he had most of the players had nicknames. Where did that come from?
It's just off the Dizzy Gillespie, the trumpet player. But also, I think it worked strangely well because at times it was just like, he would say things which were a little bit silly, which was strange because actually Keith is very, very clever, very clever. He would come out with facts and he knows like all the capitals and all this kind of stuff and just random things. As I said, he was very, very good at all different kinds of information. But as I said, sometimes you'd be like, really? Where's that come from? And ultimately, it was the idiocy that got him in the situation with the Alan Shearer in Dublin when we played games because he just got caught all the time. And that's why we were so surprised because he was probably one of the cleverest out of all of us.
Yeah, great player though. And of course, we all remember that wonderful night against Barcelona at St. James's Park. Yes, kids, we did beat Barcelona once. Could happen again in the future though. And on the left-hand side of midfield, you've got?
David. Had to be Dave. He always called us because we always called him Dave. And he would go, no, it's David. Listen, mate, it's Newcastle now, it's Dave. But just, I didn't know a great deal about him. I knew there'd been problems in France because of what had happened. And I think he'd had a falling out with Gerard Houllier and Cantona because I think he'd give the ball away in the corner for France against Bulgaria. Bulgaria scored in like added time to knock France out of a World Cup qualifier or something like that. And he was basically vilified in France, and I think he just had to get away. I don't think Gerard Houllier or Cantona did him any favours, but I suppose that criticism led us for us to get him. As I said, didn't know a great deal about him, and we always when we got a new signing tested them in our five sides. Absolutely ping the ball in, really wrap it in, not only on the floor, but make it awkward where I was horrible because what I could do is just bounce it in. So it would bounce just before it got to them. So it made them take a really good touch. Along the floor, you can get away with it a little bit. But I can remember me and Bears and a few others just absolutely wrapping him into them. And he would take a touch, dip his shoulder. He could go left, he could go right. And he would be hitting them in the top corner, bottom corner. putting them right in the corners, and goalkeepers were making very good saves. And we were thinking, wow, this is a player. And I can remember one of his first games. I think I'm not sure if it was might have been against Middlesbrough or might have been against Bolton, but I know it was against Neil Cox. And Cox is a very good friend of mine. And I actually felt like really, really sorry for him because he just really twisted him. And just in the end, I was kind of, you want him to go across and say, Dave, just knock off. It's not fair, because he was just absolutely awesome. I mean, he was a great player. We all know that. I mean, again, it was weird because sometimes things just pop up on social media, and some of the goals that he scored. As I said, I've said so many times, I was in such a fortunate position at times because I would just stand at the back and the boys would be attacking, and such an array of talent. Before Al came, so it was like Peter, Les, David, Keith, Rob Lee. And I would just stand back and I would either say to Peasy or Phil, just take this in, because this is just once in a lifetime stuff. I'm actually getting paid to be on the same pitch as these players. And it was just like, wow, these are absolutely awesome. And me thinking of the opposition, listen, I feel sorry for you, but I'm glad they're on my side.
Yeah, 100%, mate. Gave a bit of Gaelic flair and some wonderful goals and some wonderful memories. I think the thing that always makes me scratch my head almost is that, it always feels as if David was there a bit longer than he actually was, but he was only there a couple of years.
Yeah, he was. And I mean, it was disappointing towards the end, but it was disappointing towards the end anyway, because I think he'd been touted to go to Barcelona, and I think he was more or less going to go to Barcelona, and it was Kevin who convinced him to stop. And then very quickly after that, Kevin left, and obviously David was annoyed at that. And then, of course, Kenny comes in, and it is always the same. A manager, your face has got to fit. Manager doesn't like you, you're gone. It's as simple as that. And that's what happened with the likes of Les and the likes of David.
Yeah, okay. Centre midfield, there is always a whole host of choices here. Who have you gone for your first centre midfield player?
Well, the first one for me, I think, it probably is the one of the best signings Newcastle's ever made, and I think just given the value as well, was Rob Lee. What a player! I mean, he came, and I can remember when he made his debut. This was definitely against Middlesbrough. He was a winger, and he was very good at just chopping. Excellent ball control, shielded the ball so well. So it was kind of inevitable he would be in the position that he would be in, which is centre midfield. And he was always what I would say is a great wall for me, because as that central defender who was the kind of like to play out, I knew at any time if I'd give it to Rob and he was facing me and a defender was up his backside, he wouldn't lose it. He would take a touch, he would hit it off at an angle, I'd get it back, and then that angle would change, and then we've got a different picture. So him for that, he was excellent for me because he was a huge get out. But the fact of the amount of goals that he scored as well, his creativity, arriving late in the box, as I said, for somebody who we bought for 700 grand, the player that he turned out to be was an absolute snip. So underrated. Not underrated by the Newcastle fans, I don't think, but when I watched him every day, you just go to realise how bloody good he was.
Yeah, pound for pound, I still think one of the best signings in the club's history. I think you're right. So who's alongside him in the middle?
I could have gone with like Speedo, but again, I went with somebody that I pretty much grew up with, and that was Lee Clark. Fantastic player, got his goals, again, like to break into the box. Superb skill, not the quickest in the world, Nash will tell you, but very, very intelligent, really, really good player. Always had pitches in his mind about what to do before the ball come up to him, 3 or 4 pitches. I think it's the same analogy I'd use, and I always have used about myself, is as a player, for me, I class myself as a photographer. So before the ball comes, I've took 5 or 6 pictures. So I'm thinking, well, if the ball comes, I've got 5 or 6 options. As the ball comes, 3 of them options have gone, but they might have gone, so they're deleted, but I've already took another picture. So I've still got 3 or 4 options. Nash was exactly the same. Very, very rarely gave the ball away. Very creative, forward thinking. and had an eye for goal, especially, as I said, when we were just starting off, when Kevin had taken over and we would we just had survived, and then there was the rebuild. He was absolutely pivotal in that.
Yeah, he certainly was, and a great servant to every club that he went to. Okay, so the team's starting to shape up now very, very nicely, which takes us to the forward line now. Who was your first player up top?
Al has to be. Was brilliant as a defender. If you're what we class as if you're under the cosh, and so you're under pressure. If you just could clip a ball up to Ali, with 9 times out of 10, not every time, but 9 times out of 10, he would get a hold of it. He'd get you a free kick. He'd get you a corner. He'd get you a throw in. He'd get you something. He certainly wouldn't give the ball away cheaply, and he wouldn't allow, if it's not a great ball up to him, he certainly wouldn't allow the defender to get an easy intercept. But ultimately, what he was just pure goals. He could have a quiet game, not a sniff, and then he would pop up and score. I've seen it being on his side where that's happened, and I've played against him where it's happened. When I can remember Blackburn we were flying and we played Blackburn, and I think Tim Flowers had one of them games where he was just ridiculous, but we got beat 1-0. Al scored at the back post, I think Bez, and we've also played him in another game where, he didn't do a great deal at Blackburn in that game, but we got beat 1-0 and he scored. But there's been countless times when he's just, when needed, he's the man that you kind of think, well, if there's ever a chance that you want to fault somebody, it's him. And ultimately, he delivered, because look at his record. It's absolutely ridiculous. People sort of say, I think Kane might beat it. If he does, fair play to him, but that's some record, that.
What was it like playing against him?
He wasn't easy. I mean, listen, don't get me wrong. The thing is, people think I was like not the quickest and stuff like that. He liked to run down the channels, so he would go short, and he would know that there would be that signal where he'd go short and then swift, and he would turn down the channel. As a defender, you'd like to think you can read that, so you're always ahead of him. But other times he would get there ahead of you. Super strong. He'd like to use his arms. He wasn't afraid to use them to the detriment of your face. Put it that way. But he was sneaky. I mean, I can remember there was one time. This is how slow he is. I was playing for Man City, and we drew Newcastle in the cup, FA Cup. Kevin was the manager at Man City. We had some excellent players. We had Al Berkovic, Ali Benarbia, Darren Huckabee, Sean Wright-Phillips. So we came up to St James's confident that we're going to win. I think ultimately, we lost the game 1-0, and that was when I'd passed it back to Carlo Nash at the kickoff, because Carlo was very nervous, and he'd sort of said to him, "Give us an early touch." So I passed it back to him, absolutely fine. He took a touch, slipped, Al closed him down, and he got the block on and scored. Ultimately, Kevin blamed me, I don't know why, but he did. But I was playing with a broken toe, so I had to get it injected before every game, and before the game, and then at half time. But ultimately, after the game, the pain was ridiculous. So you didn't train and then played. For some reason and somehow, it had actually gotten out that I was playing with a broken toe and having injections, and it was on my left foot. And I can still picture it now. Newcastle getting a throw in really early in the game. I mean, we were getting beat 1-0 because I think we conceded after about 5 seconds. And obviously he's backing up to me, and I can see him looking down at my feet, trying to work out which was my left foot, which was my right foot, so he could stamp on it. And I mean, I'm thinking, and I can see him looking, and I can see his brain working. I went, and obviously using expletives, I was basically sort of saying, look, you can't even work it out, can you? You think so-and-so. And obviously the pennies clicked where he's just thought that's his left foot, and he's, instead of actually thinking he knows that's my left foot, that's my right foot, because we're backed on together, not turned. He's then trying to stamp on my foot. and I've moved my foot out of the way, and I've hit him on top of the head and sort of said, listen, if this is the way you want to go, then, let's do it. And we had a laugh about it, to be fair. And after that, as I said, I think there's always, when you play players that's got a little bit of physicality about it, early doors, for me, it was always like, listen, we can do this one or two ways. We can chase each other around all afternoon trying to kick lumps out of each other, or we can play football. It's as simple as that. And 9 times out of 10, that's what we did. Everybody kind of had a mutual respect. As I said, because what's the point of just kicking lumps out of each other? He's not getting anything out of it. I'm not going to get anything out of it. Let's just play football. And if you beat me by being a better player on the day, fair enough. But if we win because I've been a better defender against you, then fair enough. None of this elbow and stuff, because one of those ones did happen with Al, because I did catch him with my elbow later on in the game, and I think I bloodied his nose, which he wasn't too happy about, but I said it was an accident.
And you're sticking by it. All right. Who's playing up front with Big Al?
The best player I've ever played with, by far, and that's Peter. I mean, absolutely ridiculous. I mean, listen, there was times he would give the ball away cheaply, but it wasn't his fault. It was us, because we weren't in the right position. That's what Kevin told us anyway. But what a player. Obviously, he had that famous trick where defenders knew it was coming. They knew what he was going to do, but you still couldn't do anything about it. He was a class player. Great goals, great skill, work rate was unbelievable, and brave as so brave. But as I said, he was just one of these where you just looked at him at times and he took your breath away, because you're just thinking, my God, he is just so good. And he was just, we'd sometimes, even in training, he would do something and stick it in what we call a stanch, which is the right in the top bin. And sometimes the players would just stand and clap, because it was just like, wow, that is just scarily good. You'd think, well, where's that come from? And then with some players, you'd think, well, it's a one-off, it's a bit of a fluke, but he would do it time and time and time again. And so it became as though, well, that's the norm, because that's how good he is.
Great stuff. Great team. 1 to 11. We do give you the option of having a few substitutes, mate. So name your first sub.
Les. I've gone with Les Ferdinand. Absolutely. I mean, it was just such an amazing time for the club. And I played against Les a few times, and I can remember the conversations with the manager playing against Les, and what you had to do to try and stop him. One thing is for sure, you can be the best defender in the world, but if Les timed his jump correctly, you weren't beating him in the air, no matter how good you were in the air. He was just like, we had, like, sometimes the lads used to call him Zebedee. It's just the spring and the hang, because he could get up there, but it was just like, I mean, you've seen like different slow shots of Ronaldo. I think he's playing for Juventus, and he jumps up at the back post to head that ball, and he just hangs there. That's what Les used to do. You could possibly get up with him and be that same height, but we'd be coming down and he'd still be there. And I don't know how that worked, but that's what he could do. Again, I think his debut, we played Coventry at home, and when he got set away and he took it around the goalkeeper and scored, obviously got us the penalty as well. But to have just a player like him moved us on to a different level. He wasn't. You wouldn't see he was a huge, like massive name, but he turned out to be a massive name in Newcastle. And I just think I always remember the granddad shirts, tops that we wore, playing in that ground, and basically every supporter having one of those tops on. The noise was just electrifying. I'm talking about now, I'm kind of getting goosebumps about it, but it was just an amazing time. And to have a player like that in your team was just a pleasure to have. Yeah,
amazing times, amazing memories, and a great substitute to have if things are going against you. Who's your next one?
I've gone with Gary Speed. Again, Speedo, I think, had a little bit of a difficult time initially, but again proved what a brilliant player. I mean, God bless him. We've lost him far too early. But I mean, what a player! Box to box, great in the air, great ability of control, striking the ball. big, strong, aggressive. I mean, a lot of people will probably have him in the team first, but I can totally understand that because I was toying with that idea, but I just went with obviously the very start of how Newcastle had progressed. That's why I went with Nash. But what a player and such a lovely person off it.
Yeah, top man, and one of the best players I've seen in a black and white shirt in that position as well. Okay, your third and final sub, Steve.
I've just gone with him because just for the value of the fact he was just an absolute nutter and an idiot, and that's Tino. I mean, dear God, completely mad as a box of frogs. I mean, you know Tino very well. He's an absolute nightmare. Still is an absolute nightmare. But what a player. I mean, I can remember playing against him. I can remember Kevin having a conversation with me before we played Colombia for England. It's obviously just a warm-up game before Euro 96. And he said, let me know how you come against him, you know, your thoughts, can you read him and all this kind of thing. And then after the game, when I spoke to the gaffer, when we got back, he just asked me, you know, how did you get on? I went, couldn't read him, could not grasp him in any way, shape or form. And there's a big reason behind that. And that is because normally a player, they've got an idea in their head of are they going left, are they going right, are they taking a touch when they've got the back towards you, are they taking a touch back towards their goal to make space and turn and stuff like that. They've got a picture. Tino doesn't make that decision at all. It just whatever happens. So he's kind of playing completely and utterly off the cuff. So if he's doing that, I've got no chance of guessing to see which way he's going. None. So of course, I'm just hoping when I'm playing against him for Colombia, he goes away from goal. If he goes away from goal, I can just sort of let him go so far, then let somebody else take over. If he turns, I'm in trouble. And thankfully, he didn't turn that many times. But I couldn't read him because he was just so unpredictable. Very, very unpredictable. But again, his quality, again, the Barcelona game. But what a play! I mean, on his day, what a player caused absolutely chaos and mayhem on some days. And some days he was just as frustrating as hell. You know, you would just think he's got some Adidas trampolines on, so it would just bounce off him and bounce off him. We'd be thinking, for goodness sake, you know, get a hold of it. But still, such a good player because he was so unpredictable.
Yeah, great team, great squad. Who's going to be the manager then? I think I know who this is.
Got to be Kevin. I enjoyed all my managers at Newcastle. Obviously, I mean, I can't start maybe debut under Jim Smith, but I didn't have a great deal of time under him. But obviously, there was Kevin, there was Kenny, there was Rude, Sir Bobby. I had Terry Venables with England and one game with Glenn Hoddle. And obviously, there's other managers that I had at other places. But just for the revolution that we had at Newcastle under Kevin, from being where we were to where we got to. You know, he was the lads used to laugh at me because he was always the boys used to sort of say, "Oh," because my nickname was Boy. The boys used to sort of say, "Oh, Boy, he's your dad, he's your father," because he was. I have to be honest, he did take a liking to us. I'm not going to deny that. So. The lads would always joke because they'd be like, "Been in for another contract yet? Been in for another contract?" Because every time we play, he would say, "Hey, you do well against him. You come and see me Monday morning." And of course, ultimately, whether it was against Chris Sutton, whether it was against Les Ferdinand, whether it was against Al or whatever it was, the boys on the Monday morning would be like, "You got to see your dad this afternoon, are you?" Yeah, and I mean, listen, Kevin had his little things where he could kind of spit his dummy out, and I think the lads were disappointed how it ended in the end because we felt as though we weren't very far away from where we could be or where we wanted to be, which was to win trophies. But ultimately, that wasn't meant to be. But you can't deny the fact of, you know, what a special person that he is.
Yeah, top man. Any place for this guy?
No.
Brilliant stuff, mate. You made my team anyway, which is great. So just running back through it.
Was that not after cajoling you, sort of asking you why I wasn't in?
No, I was under pressure when I was asked for a team once, but when I had to sit down and did it properly on this program, you were in my team, Steve. We've got Shea Given in goal, then it was 4-4-2. We've got Warren Barton at right back. Centre halves, we've got Darren Peacock and Philip Albert. Left back, we've got John Beresford. Into the midfield, and in the centre of midfield, we've got Lee Clark alongside Rob Lee. And then on the left, we've got David Ginola. On the right, we've got Keith Gillespie. And up front, a pairing of Peter Beardsley and Alan Shearer. And on the benches, back up, Les Ferdinand, Gary Speed, and Tino Aspria. And managing all of that, Kevin Keegan. Great stuff. Thank you for joining the dream team there, Steve. And let's talk about Newcastle United current day now. And we spent a lot of lockdown chatting on this show about would the takeover go through. I was always confident. Obviously, I had the contact with Mia, Dad, and Amanda, which was, why I had the confidence. But we got there in the end. 7th of October, a historical day in Newcastle United's history. I think most of us felt it could be too late because the way the team was playing, the position in the league, it just felt dire. And that turnaround and that bounce when we got the new manager and didn't quite happen. And we were staring the ghost of relegation in the face. But 6 games on the bounce, unbeaten, 3 draws, 3 wins since the FA Cup exit. And things are starting to look a lot brighter. And a transfer window, our first transfer window under the new owners, a lot to talk about. So let's talk about the takeover first. You were obviously delighted when it went through. How do you think the new owners have done in the first few months of ownership?
I think they've done well. I mean, listen, for them, I think it's not easy to come in and take over a club. I think mistakes will be made. I think was the possible mistakes made in the transfer market because of maybe a little bit of naivety about the stuff getting out and all this kind of thing, possibly. But mistakes will get made, but ultimately you've got to learn from them. But has it been a good kind of takeover so far? You've got to say yes, it has. I think it's always going to be a slow process. I don't think you could. I think it would be very foolish to come in and just try and blow everybody away with the money and stuff like that. We've seen what happened with the transfer market because clubs trying to take the mick. Sort of setting a price and then all of a sudden saying, oh, well, such and such is interested in them now. So the price goes up and up and up. And I think the club did really well by sort of saying, hey, look, this is it. If you don't take it, then fair enough, we're walking away. Much to the disappointment of a couple of players. One being Botman. I think the other one was that Carlos, the lad at Sevilla. Mm-hmm. I think both of them players wanted to come, but ultimately the club kind of held the cards, and that those deals didn't happen. And you see on social media and you see these people, keyboard warriors, they're like kind of, oh, you looked as though you were signing Mbappe and Haaland and this one and that one. You've got Chris Wood and you've got Dan Burn. These are good, solid. For me, real good, solid signings. As I said before, I wouldn't have paid 25 million for Chris Wood, but was he an absolute necessity? I think he was, certainly with the fact of Callum Wilson. He's not going to be prolific for me, but I think he is very awkward. He causes problems, and I've got kind of no worries about him. I think he does give all that he's got. He just needs that little breakthrough with his goal. But when you look at likes of Dan Burn, who is a big, tall lad, of course, he's a very good defender. You get what you get with him. And, of course, he's going to be a threat from set players. Matt Target, I was really happy with him because I've watched him a good few times for Villa. Very, very solid, really, really good professional. And of course, the talisman that comes in, which was Trippier, and Trippier has been absolutely superb. I mean, 2 goals in 2 games. I think around the dressing room, he must have been amazing because you just look at all the players that seems to have just lifted since he's came in, as well as the hard work that the manager and his staff have done. And of course, you've got Bruno. That's still, we're looking forward to him getting involved and playing some games. But you just see the difference. You look at John Joe Salvia, how he's kind of turned around a little bit. You look at Joe Linton, his performances. I mean, Joe Linton, for me, and I'd said it on the radio show that I've done, and I've said it in different interviews, drove me insane because you would see glimpses of ability there, but just not enough. And it would just drive us nuts. And then, we'd break and you think, he's not even trying to get into the box. And yet you see him now and you're thinking, now we're starting to see a player that people were talking about and why, the correspondent, this South American correspondent that's on one of the radio channels was raving about him. And as I said, now he just seems to be getting some, decent form. Joe Willock, who had struggled, he's come in and done quite well. But it's nice for the manager to actually have a situation where he's got the likes of Bruno Guimaraes, or whatever you call it, like how you pronounce his second name. He's on the bench, and we've paid a fortune for him, and he's on the bench where he will get his chance and he will take it because I think he's a quality player. But it's absolutely brilliant. The manager's got a little bit of breathing space about who he can pick now, because before no matter what happened, you kind of had the same players you had to pick from.
Yeah, I would agree. You can hear Steve as well on Total Sport on BBC Radio Newcastle giving his views. Eddie Howe, I mean, was he like on your list of potential managers? I mean, we got linked with everybody and anybody who was vacant, as you would have expected with the takeover going through. Frank Lampard, Steven Gerrard, Conte, who've all subsequently gone on to other teams and competing against Newcastle in the Premier League. But was he on your list? And how impressed have you been with him and Jason Tindall since he came to the club?
It was a difficult one because obviously the club's getting linked with, as you've sort of said, everybody. It was everybody like Allegri and people like this, like top managers, Conte and
Ranić.
Ranić
as well, Manchester United. We were linked with him.
Then you're just thinking, the top managers, a lot of them would look at that and go, I'm not touching that with a barge pole, because obviously they're thinking about their career themselves and stuff like that. Now, look, you just say how Conte's reacted after losing 4 games in five, and how he's flipping out. I don't know how he would have coped under the Steve Bruce kind of era. He would have gone within 2 seconds. But yeah, I mean, I think somebody had said something about, Lampard was mentioned, and Steven Gerrard was mentioned, and yet within the space of a week, I think, Eddie Howe's team beat both of them. And an Aston Villa team, who I think is actually decent. I think Everton's, for some reason, the kind of rot seems to have set in a little bit. I need to get that out. But I think Eddie's done a very, very good job. I think what I was very impressed with was the fact of his kind of how he comes in that early, how he leaves that late, the attention to detail, like there's no stone unturned. It was kind of disappointing to hear, and I understood, and I wasn't massively against Steve Bruce, to be quite honest. I think some of the criticism was like personal, which I didn't like. I didn't like the fact of the amount of days that they were given off, given the situation. I understand days have to be given off because sometimes it's good to sort of say to the players, get away. You don't want to be seeing each other every day. But when a new manager comes in, there's different fresh ideas. The lads are having double sessions and different things. And as I said, just what you read and just what you hear on different grapevines, if you want, it sounded very, very impressive. And of course, at the moment, they look as though they've turned a corner. I've been away, and when I was away, I'd seen the team before the West Ham game. I have to be brutally honest. When I looked at the team, I thought, there's no Trippier, no Alan Maximan, there's no Wilson, there's that. There's a couple of other things. I thought if Newcastle got something out of that game, they'll do very, very well. And of course, it just goes to show now what the dressing room must be like, the training ground must be like, because they went there and actually the least they deserved was the point. So I'm impressed how things have turned around, and that's got to do with everybody. I don't think it's just one person. I don't think it's just the manager or it's just Trippier. I think that's everybody, because everybody has to buy into it to get those kind of results in those difficult circumstances.
Yeah, they certainly do. From my perspective, I think it's just been great to see, just something different. There's there's a newfound resilience amongst the team, and people like John Joe Shelby, who I've criticised many times on NUFC matters, has really started to come into his own to the point where him and Shaw, for example, have been offered new contracts. Has that surprised you?
No, because there's no doubt. I mean, this is what frustrates me about Shelby. He's a good player, but he's just sometimes a space cadet. When you've seen him getting sent off for different things, and then sometimes you see where he doesn't track back or he switches off, and you're just thinking, what you're doing. Now there just seems to be a new zest in his player. Same as Ryan Fraser. You look at him, he seems to have turned the corner. He looks as though he's kind of got that injection of kind of, I want it again. Because I know there was a lot of people looking at him thinking, bloody hell, are you going to turn up are you going to turn up? Are you going to give us what we'd sometimes seen when he was quite impressive at Bournemouth? Everybody seems to have upped the game. And that's what you need. And not only do you need everybody up the game, but you need people to realise that, listen, if I don't play it well, I know there's somebody there right next to me that's going to take me place. Whereas I didn't think there was enough of that threat until these new lads have come in.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, centre-half pairings is something you're an expert at, Steve. I mean, who is the best one, would you say? I mean, Dan Burns come in, he's a local lad. Looks as if he could be the cornerstone of that back four for quite a while alongside Trippier. And if we could persuade Target to come to Newcastle and persuade Villa to let him go, that could be a great acquisition. We could end up having a pretty solid back four. Who would you play alongside Dan Burn?
I do like Shaw. I like Fernandez. I mean, I think Jamal has struggled a little bit. But then again, I watched him. I think the last game we played at home, and he's come across and made that challenge. He's challenged with the wrong foot, but he's still made that challenge. As I said, as the captain, I think we all were a little bit disappointed at the level of performance that we were getting. And I think he was kind of struggling a little bit. But again, he seems to have upped his game. But listen, I know it's difficult, but if I was to choose, I'd probably... For me, it's a toss-up between Shaw and Fernandez, who will play alongside Dan Burn. I'm not trying to be awful to Jamal Lascelles, but I just think he has struggled. So at this moment, I'd probably go with one of them if they're both fit. When everybody's fit, could you go with the three and play Dan Burn on the left-hand side? Obviously, it's been disappointment with the Paul Dummett thing, with the injuries and stuff like that, but for me, I think Target, if he's given the opportunity and Aston Villa play a ball, I think he would love to come to Newcastle, because he's come to a stadium where, first of all, he's come to a ground where he feels as though he's wanted, because obviously he was going to be surplus to requirements at Villa because Stephen had bought Lucas Digne. So for him to come to a club like this and to sample that atmosphere, I mean, we were just talking before about the stadium in the first game of the season when we played Coventry, and it was just packed and it was completely full of the shirts that we were wearing. You look at the ground now, I mean, it looks like a foreign club's stadium with the flags. It just doesn't look like a kind of an English club ground. I don't know how to kind of explain it. It just looks weird. But it just looks absolutely amazing with the flags and stuff like that. I mean, it absolutely takes your breath away. You can imagine the lads running out of that. I mean, that's enough for you to do anything that you have to do to win the game. But, for players, for the opposing team to turn up, they must be like, this is a club 100%. Absolutely. This is a fantastic club, because the fans, as always, have been amazing. And as I said, when you do see those flags, it's just, I mean, when I've gone there the odd time, because obviously, as you know, I'm kind of, I can go back there now. It has blown me away. And you just think, what would you would give anything to be back out on there and playing in that atmosphere, because the club just seems to be heading in the right direction. But that's the biggest thing, I feel as though the club will be okay and stay in the Premier League, but that is the absolute objective, and to stay in the league, because you look at how Burnley's won the last two games, Watford won and then they got beat. it is going to be difficult. But I think the game tomorrow is going to be a big test. I'm not sure if Ivan Toney's playing. Is Christian Eriksen going to make his debut? But that's going to be a tough ground to go to. I know they've had a poor run of late, Brentford, because I think they played 10, lost 8, and drew 2. But I think it goes all the way up to them, really, where of the teams that's getting sucked in, it's not just the teams that's been at the bottom, which is Norwich, Watford, Burnley, and ourselves. It's Leeds is in there, Everton's in there, Brentford's in there. As I said, it is a big game, because I think if Newcastle win and results go, they're about 3 or 4 places outside the relegation zone. So a big game to win. Let's just hope they can do that tomorrow.
Yeah, as Steve says, Brentford aren't going into this in a great run of form. They've only won 1 point in 21 since January. The home form is fairly susceptible as well. They're not great at home. Let's just put it that way. And as for injuries, etc., well, we're pre-recording this on Friday, so the only information we could really give you is that we know that Trippier, Ritchie, and Wilson all remain available, but Javier Manquillo did return to training this week and is expected to resume at right back as well. Alan St-Maximin, of course, much publicised on social media this week as being in Monaco, peddling his way to fitness, hoping that he can fly back in and take some part in the game. And Ryan Fraser, of course, as well, was another potential doubt. He's run himself into the ground over the last few games. As for Brentford, well, they are missing Jensen and Yenvier. They're both sidelined due to injury. Jorgensen and Fosu both played in a behind closed doors game, though, on Monday, so they look as if they could return. No news on Ivan Toney, but I would expect him to play. 100%, I would expect him to play. And of course, the big talking point from Brentford's point of view is Christian Eriksen. Expecting to give him a debut. Were you surprised to see that, Steve?
Well, first of all, I'm absolutely delighted that he's back, because wow, what an absolutely huge shock. And it's amazing how not only are we getting players like that, you look at Luis Suarez, and how many fans is it happening to around the ground as well lately. Mm-hmm. It's extraordinary. So I'm delighted that he's back. I mean, you just hope that. I mean, he must be ultra confident of the assurances that he's being given that nothing's going to happen, but. There's no doubt he's an absolutely fantastic player. So I'm delighted he's back. Really delighted. I hope he plays. I hope he has a great game, but I hope he's on the losing side.
Yeah, me too. The bad news for Newcastle fans is Mike Dean's refereeing. Newcastle fans and Mike Dean certainly don't like each other. It's all about him. Was echoing round Anfield in the 3-1 defeat when he last refereed a game with us. VAR is Darren England. And we just hope that it's been switched on like it has been in the last couple of games that Newcastle United have played. But it's a good old-fashioned 3 o'clock kickoff. 1,700 Newcastle fans travelling down, so the away end is sold out. Just a little bit of news for fans travelling today. The postcode for the ground is TW8ORU. And the access to the ground is via the railway bridge from Capital Interchange Way. You can't directly walk around the perimeter of the ground. And Gunnersbury Station is closed after the game. Kew Bridge Station will be open post-match, but crowd control measures attempt to discourage away fans from using it and make the route direct. The 20-minute walk to and from Acton Town on the Piccadilly line is a viable alternative and maybe the quickest route back to King's Cross. Chiswick Park on the District line is also a similar distance. Thanks to NUFC.com for that information. Okay, Steve, prediction time. How do you see that game going against Brentford on Saturday?
Well, I think it'll be a difficult one. I think we'd seen... if I'm being honest, I always knew that even though if you look at Brentford and how they started, because I think the first game of the season, I think they played Arsenal, and it was that there was electric atmosphere. So it's only a small ground, brand new, obviously, that they had all that time to wait to get their first Premier League game and stuff like that. Really good atmosphere in there, but I think it will be a tough game, but I think we'll win the game. I think we'll win it 2-1.
Great stuff, Steve. That's what I like. Bit of confidence. Thanks for coming back on, mate. Been a pleasure to see you. And don't forget as well, Steve, as well as the many other things he does get out and do a few talk-ins. And Steve and I are going to be linking back up once again in Whitley Bay. And tickets are on sale for that now. And it's a night with Steve Howey, Thursday, the 24th of March. And tickets for that are available from www.laurelswhitley.co.uk. It's a 7:30 start. It's a very intimate venue that it only holds about 70 odd people. I did a talk in down there last year with Rob Lee. It was a fantastic night, great crowd, and the lads make it a really good atmosphere and a great night out for you. But tickets for that, as I say, laurelswhitley.co.uk, and the ticket prices vary from £15 to £30. You're guaranteed to have a good night. Steve, thanks very much, mate. Take care. We'll get you back on hopefully before the end of the season. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Thanks to all our sponsors. First up, Spider VPN for all your internet security. Google Spider VPN. They are the boys to trust. They come up at the top of the Google network search. Thanks also to skipsandbins.com. Telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website www.skipsandbins.com. Easy, contract free and pay as you go. Waste collection. Thanks also to L&G Family Funeral Directors 01913897245. And to Garden of Healing Dispensary, CBD, hemp and cannabinoid specialists, www.thegohd.com. Thanks to Arcot Interiors, you can Google them and they come up at the top of the search list also. You can also find them on Heaton Road and they are currently hiring and looking for fitters. So contact Arcot Interiors if you are available to help them with that particular trade. qtechshop.co.uk are the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, Newcastle, and also the guys who run our website. Jab Signature, you can find them at jabsignature.co.uk. Thanks to mediaarts for all of our video editing. And thank you to newworkwear.com, the specialists in the supply and branding of clothing for the workplace, for providing me with my new jacket. And if you want to subscribe to the show, hit the Newcastle Legends logo in the bottom right-hand corner and you can subscribe for free. We still do 7 shows a week and we do some true crime stuff as well. Hit the thumb up under the video to like the video, click share to your social media and drop into the comments box to speak to like-minded Newcastle fans or to leave a question. We're also available as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify and other podcast providers. If you put your phone over this QR code, it will take you straight to our website and you become a Newcastle and UFC Matters member. You get a cup, you get a pen, you get a scarf, and entered into our monthly draw where you can win some fantastic prizes. We also do live events, and each pre-match and post-match you can find us at the Dog and Parrot, and Super Mac gives us a talk about the game ahead. There is good beer, and there is good music, and there is a pool table, and kids are welcome. So get yourself along to the Dog and Parrot each match day in Newcastle City Centre. We also support the food bank on this channel, NUFC fans, foodbank.co.uk. You can find the Matchday Bucket, which is operational 365 days of the year, and you can make a virtual deposit. If you want to find us on Facebook, then just search NUFC Matters. We have a page and a group. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, search Steve Wraith. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, search @Steve Wraith.